On today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, it's all going to be about recruiting, both football and basketball. With that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credentialed media member for Cardinal Sports Zone. I also do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports. I want to take this time, as always, to say thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. As I mentioned, all about recruiting on today's episode of the show. We will begin by discussing why this upcoming weekend for Louisville Live will be the biggest recruiting weekend that the University of Louisville basketball program has had in program history. We will then transition over into elite defensive end Rueben Bain cutting his list to 6 and the Cardinals making that list. And then finally, we will wrap the show up by diving into the weekly mailbag. Before we talk a little bit about the basketball recruiting side of things, I do want to apologize for the very small hiatus at the end of last week. Had some scheduling conflicts, some other things pop up as well, so I do apologize there, but we are going to be full steam ahead up until the end of the month, where there will be some days with multiple episodes, so we will just kind of play that by ear, and I'll be sure to keep you all aware when it comes to scheduling and things of that nature. But like I said, today's episode all about recruiting, and I don't think it is some secret insight or big surprise when you say that this is going to be the biggest recruiting weekend for the Louisville men's basketball program in its history. I don't think that that's far-fetched to say at all, and in fact, it's probably crazy not to say that. So I don't want to, jump on this show and act like, oh, I'm delivering groundbreaking news, because I'm not. Everyone knows that this is a big weekend, but I think we need to kind of go a little bit more in depth on why that is. And I think that obviously star power wise, there's more 5 stars and top 4 stars on campus than there probably ever has been in one setting. There has been multiple occasions to where there's been more than one 5-star on campus. Louisville Live a couple years ago when Jay Scrub, I think it was Caleb Love and DJ Stewart, all 5 stars were on campus. So, it's not unheard of. I know that Louisville hasn't really necessarily made it a trend or anything like that for the program to heavily recruit and get 5-star players committed, because that's just not, the sort of the MO of Louisville's recruiting program wise over the past, really ever since the program came about. So Kenny Payne comes into the program being heralded as one of the top recruiters in the country, a guy with a track record of getting guys like Julius Randle, Kevin Knox, Dakari Johnson, I believe, so on and so forth, and also being credited with developing big men for Kentucky over the past decade or so. Speaking of guys like Willie Cauley-Stein, like PJ Washington, like why can't I think of anything? Why am I drawing a blank? But regardless, the big men that have developed under Kentucky, it seems like Kenny Payne has had some sort of impact in those respective developments. So from a sheer star power standpoint, yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see what Kenny Payne is really getting going for this visit. And then I think from the other standpoint, which is more of an in-depth look and analyzing point of view, is that 2022 class, a lot of people kind of give Kenny Payne some crap for, but I don't think you really can that much, considering that he took the job in mid-March. And by that point, a lot of the higher rated guys were already committed. A lot of those guys had been not only committed, but also signed their letters of intent. He did go out and get a decommitment, an LSU decommitment, Devin Ree. So he did go get a 4-star in that class. Now, a lot of other people will kind of use their frustration from Kenny Payne and company not necessarily doing a tremendous job in the transfer portal, with Louisville seemingly being involved with Tyrese Hunter, Malachi Smith, so on and so forth. Some big name players that Louisville was rumored to be involved with, and ultimately, seemingly, according to a lot of fans, struck out with many of those players. So, there is a lot of anxiety to get this recruiting to start the upward pendulum, seeing the pendulum swing, starting that upward trajectory. You got a commitment from a top 70 player in Curtis Williams Jr. for the 2023 class. But you're still looking to see that notion of, okay, there was a lot riding on the notion that Kenny Payne was an elite recruiter. Now, granted, it was going to take some time for him to develop the relationships. There's been, maybe some rumors that, NIL may be a factor. But, hey, at the end of the day, what Louisville fans want to see is they want to see what they were sold on in the first place in terms of why Kenny Payne was the right man for the job. And that, number one, I think, was the recruiting aspect of it. I guess you could say 1A is recruiting, 1B is, his ability to develop players, and also his ties to the community, to the team, being a former national champion for the Louisville Cardinals back in the 80s, and just an overall ability to get this fan base, to unite and come together and try to get the program back to where it needed to be. But a lot of fans want to see Kenny Payne recruit at the level that they were told he was going to recruit on. And I think that this is, we've heard throughout the past couple months, Louisville has made insert recruits name here final list, or they've offered this 5-star player who said that they have a decent relationship with Kenny Payne and they're growing to they're growing their relationship with Kenny Payne and company. But we haven't had that big weekend, and I think Louisville Live over the past handful of seasons since it started has been a hit when it comes to recruiting. It's been very, very successful. That's pretty much been proven. So, when Chris Mack started, or when it started in Chris Mack's tenure, this season, however, it's a little bit different because you have upwards of about 4 5 stars, and nearly as many 4-star guys. Break it down, by class 2023. This is extremely critical because this is an opportunity to land Kenny Payne's first large recruiting victory. The first monumental recruiting victory would be 2023 5-star guard AJ Johnson. Look, we've talked about him on multiple episodes of this show. I have went on the record saying that I think that he has one of the highest ceilings in all of the 2023 class. Seemingly the word around his recruitment, according to national insiders, is that it's probably Louisville and Texas going neck and neck here. But LSU was in the mix, and then with the news of DJ Wagner seemingly, just a matter of time committing to Kentucky, AJ Johnson seems to be a very, very critical recruit. It's a big recruitment, one that offers Louisville its first chance to get a monumental victory in the recruiting realm for head coach Kenny Payne, and it would be an exceptional addition to the class that they already have in 2 wings in Caleb Glenn and Curtis Williams Jr. And you'll be able to kind of continue to try to build that into a top 10 class. The 2024 cycle is, I think, what excites most people. The current junior class, there are 3 5-star players along with 2 very highly rated 4-stars. 3 of those 5-stars are ranked in the top 10. Number 7, Carter Bryant, number 8, Elliot Cadeau, and number 9, Carter Knox. And then you have another 5-star, 21st ranked Trenton Flowers, and then you also have Jamari Phillips, who is ranked as the 30th best player in the country. I'm not sure if that's the final list, but having five-star caliber players on campus for the 2024 class. Look, I think that, it's going to take some time. I get it. There's a one-time transfer, opportunity. There are NIL possibilities. So a lot of people are kind of frustrated with, hey, Kenny Payne's not landing five-star guys out of the gates. But hey, look, at the end of the day, I think that you also have to give him some time to develop those relationships and understand that he was just hired on less than 8 months ago. So 2022 class was kind of rough to build up. 2023, if they can get AJ Johnson, I think that that's a very successful class. I look at 2024 as his first opportunity to possibly get into top five team ranking status when it comes to recruiting because of the time that they're getting to develop these relationships with these players. I think having five guys on campus that are all possible five-star level guys, four of them currently are. Jamari Phillips, I think, will end up a five-star. And then you have a highly ranked 2025 four-star prospect. Look, I think that this is a huge opportunity for the future. I'm not saying that Louisville comes out of this event with multiple commitments, but it's a solid opportunity to get players of that caliber, multiple players, that are ranked in the top 10, in the top 30. And who knows, at the end of the day, you may have a guy like Elliot Cadeau or Carter Knox, Carter Bryant, that could maybe at the end of the day reclassify. And I know that sometimes that's an opportunity for these top 10 players. So you just never know, but it's a great opportunity because you have your first possible recruiting victory. In terms of the recruitment of AJ Johnson, this is a big opportunity here. I think that that's probably the more urgent situation. Johnson visited Texas. It's good that he didn't commit right then. He's going to give Louisville its shot, and they have the shot this weekend. So Louisville Live, definitely the best or the biggest, I should say, recruiting weekend in Louisville program history. So we'll talk a little bit more about that weekend briefly in the weekly mailbag. Before we do that, we're going to transition over into the football side of things. Rueben Bain has cut his list. The Cardinals have made that list. We'll talk about that here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at Simply Safe. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because I use Simply Safe in my own home. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. And here is why I love it. With that 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency. Even if you're not at home or can't be reached, it blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home are available. Smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. There's no place like Simply Safe. So, kind of transitioning over into the football side of things, recruiting wise. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Dalton, Scott Satterfield's on the hot seat. There's no telling what his job security looks like in the current sense in the second half of the season. There's no guarantee that he's going to be here next year. So do you really need to talk about Louisville making a list cut when, unless Scott Satterfield turns this around, exponentially, there's a solid chance he won't be the head coach at Louisville next year? So does the recruiting really matter? I told you whenever the Cardinals lost a game to Boston College that I was going to operate this podcast like I usually do, and that is under the direction right now of head coach Scott Satterfield. We're going to operate that he is going to be the head coach next year until he either gets let go or there's an agreement on the buyout, whatever may have you. Now, granted, I'm not saying that he's going to be back next year. I think, I went on record saying that if they don't reach a certain level of success, I think that he's gone. But regardless, yeah, I think it's worth noting that Louisville is still being involved with highly rated prospects recruiting, considering that they're not necessarily having that. I mean, they're 3-3, so I mean they're 500, but they're not having the success that they should be. But Rueben Bain visited, I believe, for the Florida State game with current Louisville commitment Stanquan Clark. And also now current Louisville commitment Cataurus Hicks of Miami Central High School. Now, granted, there has been rumors that even if Scott Satterfield is let go, that a lot of these guys are committed for NIL, for the opportunity to play early. So you have to wonder. I think you'll lose some players in the class if Scott Satterfield is let go. But I think that you have the opportunity, really more so than you would in past years, to keep a lot of this class together. And I know that, South Florida has been a big point of focus for this staff and for the program as a whole. So I think that, whoever the next coach would be, obviously, I think, assuming that there would be a next coach, would be very, very highly interested in Rueben Bain, currently ranked as the 89th best player in the 2023 class. 6'2" defensive lineman, plays both on the interior and on the edge, 250 pounds. Here's the scouting report from Andrew Ivins last November. A productive pass rusher that appears to be just scratching the surface of his potential, lined up primarily out of the edge as a junior for one of South Florida's top talent producing programs, and simply dominated, totaling over 15 sacks. Quick get-off allows him to work his way around most offensive tackles with ease on Fridays, but square frame suggests that he might ultimately kick inside at the next level, as he's still growing and could eventually push 280 pounds or more. Has a few different moves in his toolbox and is rather effective with a simple dip. Understands to some degree how to stack and shed while keeping his eyes in the backfield, not one to give up on a rush, and will hustle to make a stop outside of the hashes. Comes from a football family, as both his uncle and brother were multiple-year starters at the FBS level. Will need to keep developing and add some core strength over the next few years in hopes of not getting overpowered and washed away on Saturdays, but looks like the type of defensive lineman that can flush out pockets and put pressure on quarterbacks. Like I said, the Cardinals included in his top 6 last week, along with Oklahoma, Auburn, Miami, Alabama, and Florida State. At this point, it seems like Miami is probably the team to beat. I know that the Hurricanes have kind of been the presumed leaders over the past handful of seasons. But I want to read what Bain said to On3 about Louisville. Anybody from South Florida who goes to Louisville succeeds in some type of way. It's a rich pipeline from South Florida to Louisville. They have a great defensive scheme that also has their D linemen in the position to make plays. I have never seen that before. At least 1 to 2 defensive linemen in the position to make a play every play. I think that that's a very interesting note, because Louisville's defensive front seven has been exponentially better than they have in the past handful of seasons, going into before this past week, because the bye week kind of affects the statistics. They were number 5 in sacks on the season, number 1 in sack yardage, had a ton of tackles for loss, getting a lot of pressure, not only from the outside, but on the interior as well. Even with Jermaine Lole out, that's huge to think about. The South Florida to Louisville pipeline, that don't think that doesn't go unnoticed. Lamar Jackson, Teddy Bridgewater, Eli Rogers, so on and so forth. The guys that come from Florida really have been able to make a name here at Louisville. Obviously, this is going to be a very, very tough recruitment to win over the likes of Nick Saban, Florida State, in-state, Miami right down the road, so on and so forth. So I think that at the end of the day, and then Brent Venables over to Oklahoma, even though they're struggling, it's going to be tough to, but if you're in these types of recruitments, you're going to go up against the best programs in the country. So I think that at the end of the day, I think that you have to like where Louisville sits, because they have a chance. He visited with 2 of his teammates that are Louisville commits against Florida State. So I think there's an opportunity for him to possibly play early next year. There's an opportunity for him to really be a multiple-year starter at this level for a defense that could use him both on the interior and off the edge. So I think that a lot of this could change with the coaching change. So I think you have to take things with a grain of salt. Yes, we're going to talk about these, recruiting updates, but we are also going to acknowledge the fact that, who knows, things may change a little bit if a coaching change is made for the better or for the worse. Who knows? But hopefully, this is an instance to where Louisville can continue to develop that Florida pipeline. You not only have Hicks and Clark, but you also have some other, Miami guys like William Fowles. You have Jordan Church from that area I think from IMG. You have Raekwon Adkins as well. So big time there. Big time recruiting updates. So hopefully they can continue that pipeline from South Florida to Louisville. But for the remainder of the show, we're going to dive into the weekly mailbag. Before we do that, we're going to talk about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So going into the weekly mailbag segment, there's a couple good questions on here. I want to read the first one. Talked about Louisville Live. The question is, if one prospect were to commit, if one prospect that is visiting on Saturday were to commit, who would it be and why? I think it's A.J. Johnson, simply due to the timing aspect of it. A.J. is a senior. The others are either sophomores or juniors that are just kind of getting into the visit part of their recruiting. But A.J. Johnson has taken visits. He's cut his list to a final, I think, 4 or 5. He's already visited Texas. Louisville could be, his last major visit, or maybe LSU gets a visit as well. But with Louisville neck and neck with Texas here, I think that it's a possibility that if this visit goes very good, that who knows, we could have the third member of the 2023 class. So moving right along, there was a tweet out from Amari Huggins-Bruce that he would not be playing the next 2 weeks. Can you comment on that? I don't know. I saw the tweet, and then it got deleted. I don't want to speculate. I don't know whether it's injury related or suspension or whatever personal, things that he has to take care of. I don't know. So I'm not going to speculate. We'll see what the status is for the game against Pittsburgh coming up. But at the end of the day, I don't know. And I'm not going to sit on here, this podcast, and say, look, it's this or that, or it could be this, it could be that. I heard this or I heard that. There's just no point to it. We'll talk about that if there's going to be something that pops up. Like I said, I don't know. So it's hard to say, but if something were to happen, we'll talk about it. But hopefully Amari does play against Pittsburgh, so we will see. Moving right on along with the teams that we're playing at the end of the season, with James Madison losing, with Devin Leary out for the season for NC State. Pittsburgh hasn't been that impressive. Do you think Louisville can get to 6 wins? Can they? Yeah. Will they? Your guess is as good as mine. I think that, unfortunately, the Devin Leary news does help Louisville. You never want to see anybody go through an injury, especially not a season-ending injury. So we wish him the best of luck and a very quick and full recovery for that young man. He is a tremendous quarterback. But obviously, if Devin Leary is not playing, that means that Louisville has a better chance to beat NC State. But don't let that fool you. NC State is a very good team. James Madison losing doesn't take away the fact that they are very, very, very solid. They're well coached. And then Pittsburgh, you have a solid defense. You have a decently solid offense. So I think that, maybe you can, but I don't think that there's been a lot that changes. Maybe it's not a rest of the season where you're playing 5 ranked teams week to week to week to week to week. But I do think that it's still going to be very, very tough. So, okay, this is a volleyball question to end out the weekly mailbag. With Anna DeBeer still out, do you think that Louisville can win a national championship without her? I don't think we're going to need to answer that, because Anna DeBeer, all signs are pointing to her being back at some point before the postseason. She got hurt in that Stanford game about a month ago, and has been considered week to week. So Obviously hasn't played since then, and the Cards have won every single match. They've beaten ranked teams like Stanford. They beat Stanford. They beat Kentucky. They beat Georgia Tech. So can they win a national championship without Anna DeBeer? Yeah, I mean, they've got the talent. Claire Chaussee has been huge. She just joined the 1,000 kill club for the program. You've got exceptional interior presence with Kara Kress and Amaya Tillman, Nina Mbonu. I think that's how you pronounce it. If I'm pronouncing Kara or Nina's last name wrong, please forgive me. But you have both of those players that have been very, very solid. You have Iko Jones as well on the other side. Lena Scott is the best libero in the country, in my opinion. Raquel Latharo has been great. You've got exceptional defense with Alexa Hendricks and Aiden Bartlett. So, I mean, you have the pieces to still contend. Obviously, getting an All-American caliber player in Anna DeBeer back would give you that much more of an opportunity and the advantage to go all the way. But it would be tough, but I think they could do it. But I don't want to really consider that because all signs are pointing to Anna being back, at some point, hopefully in the near term. So, hey, but that's going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Now, do yourself a favor. Go check out Locked On ACC, hosted by Candace Cooper. That's also 5 days a week. Tomorrow's episode will be diving more into the upcoming matchup against Pittsburgh. Also have some women's basketball talk either planned for this week or at some point next week. I haven't really decided yet, but ultimately that's going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We will see you right back here